You ever been fined $200 because your mailbox post was half an inch too tall? You ever had the entire neighborhood stop waving back because the HOA president politely suggested you were disrupting the aesthetic? And you ever wonder what would happen if the quiet new guy on the block with the rusty metal sculpture in his yard turned out to be the one holding the detonator to her entire empire? Let me tell you. 3 months ago I moved into the last unrenovated Victorian on Maple Grove Lane in Evergreen Estates, the one the realtors called charming fixer-upper, and the neighbors called an eyesore. I bought it cash under the name Jordan Hale, struggling digital artist. What nobody knew was that Jordan Hale was a ghost I wore like a cheap Halloween costume. The real me? I run the governor's Housing Integrity Task Force. We don't do press conferences. We just make empires disappear. My first weekend I welded together a 12-foot monstrosity out of rebar, rusted car parts, and old HOA violation notices I'd collected from other neighborhoods. I planted it dead center in my front yard and called it Suburban Scream. 23 hours later the cream-colored envelope arrived. Dear Mr. Hale, while we celebrate artistic freedom, your installation violates sections 7.2, 14.4, and 19.1 of the Evergreen Estates Declaration of Covenants. Please remove within 72 hours or face daily fines of $250. Warmest regards, Lydia Beaumont, President, Evergreen Estates HO. I folded the letter into a paper airplane and flew it across my living room. Game on, Lydia. Lydia Beaumont looked like every Pinterest board's dream. Pearl necklace, pastel cardigans, voice like warm honey drizzled over broken glass. She ran the HOA the way a mafia don runs the docks, with spreadsheets, fake smiles, and the quiet certainty that the rules were written by God himself and only she could read the fine print. She started small. The neighborhood app, that glowing rectangle of curated perfection, became her weapon. Good morning, neighbors. Just a friendly reminder that quiet hours begin at 8 p.m. Some of us have noticed unusual grinding and hammering from the old Victorian. Let's all respect the piece that makes Evergreen Estates so special. 2 hearts. Translation: Jordan Hale is a problem. Within a week the smiles turned to sidewalk pivots. Mrs. Abernathy's golden retriever suddenly needed to cross the street whenever I walked by. The mailman stopped making eye contact. The woman at the boutique bakery went from extra vanilla latte, hon? To that'll be $6.48 in the flattest voice known to man. Then the accidents started. One Tuesday I came home to find my entire garage studio flooded. A sprinkler head on my lawn had mysteriously rotated 90 degrees overnight and sprayed directly through the open ventilation window for 6 straight hours. $2,000 of paint, canvas, and hard drives gone. The landscaper who fixed it shrugged. These old systems, you know? I photographed the spray pattern, the pristine valve, the perfect angle. Filed it. Smiled. A week later a storm knocked a massive oak limb through my picture window. Except the break on the limb was saw-cut, clean as a surgical scar, and there were ladder scuff marks in the mud. I collected the sawdust in evidence bags like it was cocaine. Every time, Lydia posted the same saccharine message. So sorry to hear about the damage at 142, Maple Grove. Mother Nature can be cruel. Sending prayers. Folded hands. I never replied. I just kept welding. Kept watching. Kept recording every single post, every anonymous complaint, every camera I'd quietly installed the day I moved in. Then came the night that changed everything. Rain hammered the boarded-up window like it wanted inside. A soft knock at 10 p.m. I opened the door to Elias Grant, 81 years old, wire-rimmed glasses, tweed jacket that smelled faintly of pipe tobacco and dignity. Mr. Hale, he said, voice gentle as falling leaves. May an old man impose on you for a cup of tea? We sat in my half-renovated living room. He looked at the exposed brick, the original heart pine floors, and his eyes filled with something ancient. I grew up in this house, he said. Before the Beaumonts rewrote history. Over the next 2 hours Elias Grant told me the real story of Evergreen Estates. How Lydia's great-grandfather, Silas Beaumont, had used forged deeds, predatory loans, and Depression-era desperation to swallow every farm on this ridge. How the Grant family had lost 300 acres. How old Mr. Hemlock, the county clerk who lived right here, had hidden duplicate originals behind a false wall in the root cellar because he knew what was coming. Silas never found them, Elias whispered. Lydia thinks this house is the last loose thread that could unravel her entire fortune. That's why she needs you gone before the lakefront resort deal closes in 14 days. My blood turned to ice water. 14 days. Then my encrypted phone buzzed. 2 messages. Pinnacle Holdings, Lydia's shadow company. Accelerating. Forced sale via bought councilman imminent. And the second, she just hired Marcus Kessler. Ex-FBI. Best in the business. He will burn your cover in 48 hours. 48 hours. I poured 2 fingers of bourbon, looked at Elias, and said the first words I'd spoken aloud in weeks. Mr. Grant, how would you like to watch me bury that woman in front of the entire town? He smiled like a man who'd waited 81 years for this exact sentence. The invitation to the Evergreen Estates annual charity gala arrived the next morning, thick cream cardstock, gold foil, the works. Join us for an evening of elegance and giving, it said. I RSVP'd yes. Lydia thought she was inviting a nuisance to his own execution. She had no idea she was inviting the firing squad to her coronation. 48 hours later, I walked into the grand ballroom of the Evergreen Country Club, wearing the cheapest rented tux I could find. It hung off me like a confession. The room smelled of money, Chanel No. 5 and self-satisfaction. Lydia glided across the stage in a silver gown that probably cost more than my house, smiling the smile that had bankrupted families for 4 generations. She gave her speech, community, values, protecting what we've built, while her eyes kept flicking to me like a snake tasting the air. Then she did it. And while we celebrate tonight, we must remain vigilant. Some elements simply do not belong. She raised one manicured hand. The double doors opened. 2 local cops, the same ones who'd shown up at my house twice before, started the long walk toward me. The crowd murmured with delicious anticipation. This was better than the silent auction. Lydia's voice dripped honey and venom. Officers, I regret to say we have a trespasser causing a disturbance. The taller cop reached me. Sir, I'm going to need you to. I looked straight past him, straight into Lydia's triumphant blue eyes, and spoke one calm word into the hidden mic in my cuff. Commence. The chandeliers died. Total blackout. Gasps everywhere. Then the massive projection screens behind the stage flared to life with crystal-clear audio. Lydia's own voice, recorded 3 weeks earlier in her home office. I don't care how you do it. Flood the studio. Saw the branch. Make it look like an accident. I want that man gone before the closing. The crowd froze. Next slide. The full web of shell corporations, all feeding into Pinnacle Holdings, all controlled by one woman whose smiling headshot sat dead center like a black widow in her web. Lydia's face drained of color. The microphone slipped from her fingers and clattered across the stage. Then the final screen. Live feed from the governor himself. Lydia Beaumont, as of this moment your assets and those of Pinnacle Holdings are frozen. State troopers are entering the building. Officers, stand down. The doors exploded open. Not the local cops, 12 state troopers in tactical gear. They moved like sharks. Handcuffs clicked around Lydia's wrists with a sound that echoed like a church bell at a funeral. She didn't scream. She just stared at me, lips moving silently. You think this ends it? I stepped onto the stage, picked up her fallen microphone, and looked out at 200 people who suddenly realized they might be next. My name is Jordan Hale, I said, voice steady. I'm the director of the governor's Housing Integrity Task Force. For 6 months we've been investigating the criminal enterprise that has poisoned this community from the inside. I nodded toward the back. But the real story began a century ago. Mr. Elias Grant, would you please join me? Elias walked up, small, straight-backed, carrying the weight of every stolen acre in his bones. I handed him the mic. He spoke quietly, but every soul in that room heard him. My grandfather lost this land to Silas Beaumont with a forged signature. Tonight, thanks to a brave clerk who hid the truth in the very house that man tried to steal, justice finally caught up. The screen showed the original 1898 deeds. The name on the largest parcel wasn't Beaumont. It was Grant. The room was so silent you could hear pearls clattering to the floor. In the weeks that followed, the HOA was dissolved by court order. The corrupt councilman resigned in federal custody. Lydia's investors started flipping on each other like dominoes wearing orange jumpsuits. Evergreen Estates elected a new board. A teacher, a nurse, a single dad, whose first act was to name Elias Grant chairman of the Historical Preservation Committee. And me? I stayed in the old Victorian. Took down the suburbia scream sculpture. The neighborhood kids now call it the Rocket. I don't mind. One quiet Saturday I sat on my porch with coffee when my secure line pinged. Anonymous email. One attachment. A black and white photo, two young men, arms around each other, grinning in front of a university building. One was my mentor, the founder of the task force. The other had Lydia's exact jawline and eyes like a shark. Her father. The man who taught her everything. I stared at that picture until the coffee went cold. I thought I'd won the war. Turns out I'd only killed the first dragon. The real one was still out there. And he just sent me a family photo. Personal reflection. Power disguised as politeness is still power. The moment you let someone write rules that only they can break, you've already lost. But the second you refuse to play by their rules, and expose them instead, the whole house of cards comes down. Stay quiet long enough to build the evidence. Then speak once and speak loud enough to echo for 100 years.